It's time to hear the story, make the connection, learn the lesson, and gain the wisdom. Are you ready? Let's get charged and be changed. The Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Conversations on grace, healing, and deliverance. This is Marcy Bush. Come on, let's journey together. Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Today, as I always say, I have a special guest with me, but I always mean it. This guest is my niece. Her name is Tekia Pope, and she is with us today because she's going to tell us some things that went on during her pregnancy and that went on with her second child. Maybe some other stuff will be added in there in between, but I know that her testimony is going to help you. So I really do want you to give it your full attention. It may not be about this thing that you need it for, but I believe that something that's said is going to speak to you. So we thank you for joining us, Tekia.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess we'll kind of start at the beginning. I know, so you have two beautiful children.
Yes, two boys.
Yes, and their names are?
Kevin is my oldest, and then my youngest is Karter.
Okay. And so with Kevin, when it came to your pregnancy or whatever, was it a normal pregnancy? Did anything happen out of the ordinary?
It was normal up until probably the time for me to deliver, and he was a big boy.
Okay.
He had a big head.
Okay.
But otherwise, my pregnancy was normal. I didn't have any issues, any complications. I actually went past my due date, so I had no issues at all. It was normal pregnancy.
Okay. And then came Karter. And so tell me where things kind of started to get iffy or things started to change, because it started out as a normal pregnancy, correct?
So it did start out as a normal pregnancy. The only issue I was having was I was already dealing with an elevated blood sugar. I wasn't a diabetic, but my OB is a very proactive doctor.
Okay.
So she sent me to a maternal fetal medicine doctor who started monitoring me probably about maybe like 16 weeks.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit before that. And so those appointments would entail ultrasounds and blood work. And towards about the 19 weeks, maybe 20, I went for an appointment. I went to have blood work drawn. And for some reason, the test that they were trying to run, the first two times, and this is just crazy how it happened, the first two times the lab just for some reason could not get a reading. The test they could not get a definitive answer.
Okay.
So they actually sent my blood work to another lab. That lab came back and said that my blood work came back borderline for spina bifida.
Okay.
And by borderline, like 2 points above whatever the rate is. So the doctor said, it could be anything. That just happens. The number is so low that we'll just continue to monitor you with ultrasounds. Went to have an ultrasound, and Karter, even from the womb, he's my stubborn child. He's very intentional about everything. He does what he wants to do in his time. And so they could not see his back where they needed to see. He was in a position that, they had me drink soda. They had me get up and walk around. They had me do all types of things, and they just could not see it. Okay. So I went back for another appointment at 24 weeks, and it was a crazy day, a crazy appointment, because my mom was in town. My oldest was out of school for Thanksgiving break. It was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Okay. So my mom and my son came with me to the appointment. And while the ultrasound tech was doing the scans, it was just one of those moments, I guess almost like off a TV show or a movie. I just knew something wasn't right. She was just taking a really long time. Okay. And she went and got the doctor. The doctor came in, and they're both looking at the screens, and at that point I just knew something wasn't right. And she told me there in the room, she said, looks like there's it looks like the baby has spina bifida. It looks like there's a sac on his lower back.
Okay, because I was going to say, tell us what spina bifida is.
So what spina bifida is, it's a neural tube defect. And what it is when the spine is forming along with the spinal column where all the spinal fluid is, there's almost like a gap or an opening.
Okay.
And there's two different types. There is myelomeningocele, and then there is just, I think the other one's called meningocele, just by itself. I can't remember.
Okay.
Karter has myelomeningocele. That's the type of defect he had. And that one is where it's not just fluid in that sac that forms, there's also nerves.
Okay.
So imagine your spine goes straight down. His spine came and there was a gap, a hump just like that, you could basically say. And in that hump was spinal fluid and nerves.
Okay.
And so when that happens, of course, the fluid starts to back up in your brain as well.
Okay.
So one good thing during that time was like, we see the sac, it's low, you feel your baby kick. So these are all good signs.
Okay.
And at the time they measured the ventricles of the brain, his were measuring a little large, but nothing significant at that time. But of course I'm in her office and I'm trying to hold it together. My son is there, my mother is there.
And how old was Kevin at the time?
Kevin was 5.
Okay.
Let's go with 5.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he was 5.
Okay.
Yes, he was in kindergarten, so he was 5.
Okay. So old enough to know something is happening. When like a 2 or 3 year old just running around.
Right.
Okay.
He could tell his mommy was upset.
Yes.
Because I even heard him ask my mom, what's wrong with mommy. So he knew something was wrong. And so I'm trying to hold it together. And so, of course, at these appointments now, I'm constantly having to get my blood work drawn. This is, outside of the spina bifida. So, the doctor talks with me. She lets me know she's going to refer me to a pediatric neurologist. And they'll do some scans and can hopefully give me some more information.
Okay.
So, I tell her, okay. I go into the room where they draw my blood and I'm still bawling. She comes in the room, she gives me a hug, and she tells me, everything's gonna be okay. She was like, you just enjoy your holiday. We'll work this out. It'll all be okay. And that was one of those moments where I really needed that hug. It was like an aunt or a grandmother.
Okay.
And that is a moment that, I will always remember and thank her for. But, then of course my husband's not there.
Right.
So he's calling me and I'm not answering his calls because I don't know how to tell. He's at work and I don't know how to say, yeah, I just went to the doctor and they're saying our baby has a birth defect.
Right.
So after about probably 2 hours of me dodging his calls, I finally answer. And he's like, what are y'all doing? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, we went to get something to eat. He's like, well, how was your appointment? I was like, it was okay, but, I'll tell you about it later. Okay. And he wants to know what's going on. So I kind of just say, they said the baby has spina bifida. And, he gets quiet. And I'm like, I don't know what else to tell you right now. And so that was what a lot of people in the spina bifida community call D-Day or Diagnosis Day. Okay. It was the beginning for us, the beginning of our journey with Karter.
Yes. Now, did you know before that part of the journey, did you have any knowledge of what spina bifida? I know a lot of us hear about it. We hear of it, but we don't really have knowledge of what it is. Were you aware of what it entailed?
Not at all. I knew it was a birth defect. Okay. I knew it affected the spine, but that was honestly all I knew. Okay. And of course, I started doing the one thing they tell you not to do. Google. Google, and I went down the Google rabbit hole. Yeah. But one good thing I can say about doing that was I learned and this is something that anyone who has a child or a loved one with spina bifida will tell you, no two people with spina bifida are the same. It's literally called a snowflake condition.
Wow.
And that every snowflake is different. So there can be a child who has, could be the same gender, age, race as Karter, have his defect in the same exact spot, and still have completely different issues.
Okay.
And so that kind of made it difficult to because the first thing you want to know is what to expect. What am I going to have to do for my child? What am I going to have to, our lives are about to change, not just mine or my husband's, but also my, at the time, 5-year-old.
Right.
So that in itself was a lot to take in. And at this point, I'm halfway through my pregnancy. So it's not a lot of time to prepare for what's going to happen or what's going to go on.
Right. Did you have a lot of what if? I know I'm guilty of a lot of what ifs.
I had all the what ifs.
Okay.
What will we need? Will we be able to stay in this house? Will we have to get another car? Will Karter be in a wheel? Like, how much assistance will he need? Will I have to quit my job and stay home and take care of him? Well, I have to, it all runs, and I am a planner. Okay. I like to know A, B, C, D. And at that, I didn't, it was definitely a learning experience for me. Okay. Because it definitely took me somewhere I never thought I would have to go. It, not just emotionally, but physically. Okay. Because the doctor's appointments, of course, I was constantly going to the doctor at that point, getting scans, I had to get an MRI while I was pregnant, which I didn't, I don't like getting MRIs when I'm not pregnant. Right. So that in itself, but in the end, I was doing it all, everything I could do for him. Yes. Whatever I needed to do so we could know as much as possible before he was born. Right. We met with the pediatric neurologist and pediatric neurosurgeon, excuse me, and he basically told us what Google said, that he told us what he saw in those scans, but he also let us know that when he's actually born, we could see all kinds of things that we can't see in these scans. Okay. And they give you worst case scenario. Okay. And that's when we had to start, really relying on faith. The doctor is saying this, but this is what we're going to plan for. This is how we're going to take it, how we're going to handle it. I am thankful, though, that the doctors, everyone that we dealt with during my pregnancy and during that time, were helpful. Everyone in the NICU after Karter was born, they made sure we understood every single step of everything that was happening, because it's a lot. And it's a lot, I'm sure, for new parents, because we already had a child, but I felt like we were first-time parents all over again.
Because it was out of the ordinary.
It was out of the ordinary. It was not how we were planning for things to go, but life never really goes as planned. Right. The rest of my pregnancy, pretty much after that, was uneventful until about 37 weeks. So blood sugar was doing great, blood pressure was doing great, and all of a sudden, I woke up and my feet and legs, well, really my feet were just extremely swollen. Like, none of my shoes fit. I had to actually take some sneakers and take the laces out so I could go to work. Wow. That's how swollen I was. And I sent my OB a message, and I was like, I'm really swollen. And so she was like, okay, instead of you coming, this I think was a Wednesday, she was like, come tomorrow, which was a Tuesday. So I went to that appointment, and you get your vitals taken, and they send you back out to the waiting room where I got my vitals taken. Well, the nurse took my blood pressure, and then she asked another nurse to come over and take it again. And she was like, did you get what I got? And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? What are we getting?
Right.
And she's like, okay, you can go back out to the waiting room. Well, before I could sit down, I hear my OB's nurse calling my name. And she was like, what are you doing? Girl, what's going on? And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, your blood pressure is 200/99. And she's taking me down the hallway to where the exam rooms are. Before we could turn the corner, my doctor's coming up the hall.
Okay.
And she was like, no, you need to go to the hospital. She was like, I'm going to call your other doctor. This is the maternal fetal medicine doctor. She's like, I'm going to call the other doctor, let her know I'm sending you to the hospital. She was like, don't go get anything to eat. Don't go home. Don't stop anywhere.
Okay.
Go straight to the hospital.
Okay.
So I had
Were you by yourself?
I was by myself.
Okay.
Because I went to work and I was like, I'm just going to run up here real quick so they can see what's going on with my feet. I'll be right back. Literally, and I shouldn't have said, I said, I'll be right back.
Okay.
I went to the hospital, had to stay overnight. They put me on some medication, and I was able to go home. They said, stay home tomorrow. You can go back to work on Friday.
Okay.
Because they let me out on Wednesday, so yeah, stay home tomorrow. You can go back to work on Friday. I was like, okay, I'm on this blood pressure pill. I took it that Thursday. Numbers looked good because I had to start taking it myself at home. Numbers looked good. Went to work Friday. And I did get nervous, so I started showing people like, hey, this is what you need to do. But honestly, I was supposed to have 3 more weeks.
Okay.
I had a scheduled C-section. And I think this is what's so funny about it is, I was like, no, I'm having my baby on March 5th. That's when my C-section is. So
Okay.
no bag was packed, no
Okay.
room was ready because I wasn't having my baby till March 5th.
Because you are in charge.
Yeah, because this is how it's going to go. I can't control the spina bifida situation, but I know my baby's I'm having a C-section. This is what's happening on that day. That's when everything is planned. Friday was normal. We went to the Black Panther came out. We're a big Marvel family.
Okay.
So we went and took our oldest to see it. I was, fine. The next day, I took my blood pressure and it came back kind of high. And I was like, well, I texted my friend who's a PA and I was like, hey, my blood pressure is whatever it was. It was like 100 over something. 100 something over 100 probably. It was high. And she was like, yeah, I think you should call your doctor. So I called the doctor and she is a very hands-on. So you don't get an answering service. She's answering. I'm talking to her.
Okay.
And she's like, so we take a half of one of my blood pressure pills and lay down on my left side and take it and call her back. Well, it wasn't coming down. She was like, okay, yeah, I want you to go back to the hospital.
Okay.
At that point, we go to the hospital and we find out we're not going back home until the baby is born. Okay. And I ended up having Karter. That was a Saturday. I ended up having Karter that following Thursday.
Okay.
And they had to do it on a Thursday because he needed to have his closure surgery on his spine the next day.
Okay.
So
now what's that? The closure surgery on the spine.
Yeah, so they basically call it just a defect repair.
Okay.
Oh, that's how it was worded to us.
They're trying to, that area that was open.
So that area was open. Thankfully, he had enough skin. They didn't have to do any type of graft. They literally just opened and put everything back inside and sewed him up. Okay. And they were at that time thinking he may have to get a what's called a VP shunt. And what that shunt does is it drains the fluid from that spinal fluid from his brain down into his stomach, and it's absorbed by his body. Okay. But at that time, they were like, "No, he looks good. He doesn't need a shunt. We're just gonna repair the defect. He'll have to be in the hospital for 3 weeks, and then we'll, continue to monitor him." So everything was going good. He was about a month old when, and actually, let me rewind back. Karter, we call Karter our spina bifida warrior. Karter was supposed to be in the NICU for 3 weeks. He was only there for 1. They put him out. He did not need to be there. So they let him come home. When he was about a month old, the fluid was continuing to back up on his brain, so they decided to go ahead and do the shunt. And that was nerve wracking, because here my baby's a month old. He's not even 6 weeks old. He hasn't even had shots yet, and he's having to have literal brain surgery.
Yeah.
But we prayed about it. He went and had his procedure. Came through it with flying colors, and after that we just started focusing on his physical therapy. He had to have another little surgery in between there. When he was 3 months old, he had a hernia. He had to get a hernia repair. And so at this point, he's not even 6 months, and he's had 3 surgeries. But nothing was phasing him.
Okay.
We started working with physical therapists, because it does affect, spina bifida does affect the children physically. So we weren't sure if Karter was going to be able to walk, if he was going to be able to crawl. But we were lucky that she was able to come work with him in our home.
Okay.
Karter did start crawling and sitting up, and then I always laugh about it. He was standing and holding on and walking, so the physical therapist brought a walker.
Okay.
He didn't even have the walker a week, and he started just taking steps without it.
Okay.
So she packed up the walker and took it back.
Okay.
And so he started walking he's probably about 18 months when he started walking, and he has not slowed down since. We are so blessed and grateful, because there's a lot of children who have spina bifida, and their defect not as severe as Karter's, who have to use crutches, have to use walkers, are in wheelchairs, have had to have hip surgeries. And, we know, Karter's journey with spina bifida, we're just getting started, really. So we know there may be different things that we may have to face later on, but he just continues to show us just how nothing stops him.
Yes.
He had to have, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was March of 2020. I went to get him up for daycare, and I noticed where his shunt is, there was like a sink in the shunt. And it was just, I was like, why is it dipped in like that? And I called my husband in the room, and he looked at it, and he was like, I was like, this isn't right. So we called the neurosurgery team at AU Health, or Children's Hospital of Georgia. And of course they got Karter in that same day, did an MRI, and it was like, it looks like his shunt is starting to malfunction. How you caught that, we don't know.
Okay.
He had the surgery, and they literally, had just pretty much got clogged off. The doctor said had he not done that surgery that day, Karter probably would have gotten really, really sick within like the next 24 hours, because that's how clogged off it was.
Wow.
But he had that surgery, brain surgery, and that afternoon when he woke up from the anesthesia, he was like, "Hi, mommy." It's just like the way he bounces back sometimes, just it continues to amaze us. And I know it's nothing but God that he has gotten and has done so much.
Yes.
And one of my aunts, she always likes to say, "Who's going to tell Karter he has spina bifida?"
Right.
Because to him, he can do everything or anything anyone else does. Nothing stops. If he sees this person do it, I'm going to try it too. I'm going to climb this wall. I'm going to, it definitely, his testimony is definitely also our testimony.
Yes.
Because when I see him do, sometimes you have to remind yourself, like, look what how many, he's had at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 surgeries, countless medical procedures, and some people go their whole life and never have one surgery. So he's definitely my little warrior. He's amazing.
Yes. Karter's being healed. Y'all, I believe the grace was on y'all to go through that. I'm not saying it was easy, but y'all were always able to access the grace that God had for you. That grace is the power to do, the ability to stand up under it, and y'all access that grace. And I know that the grace of God is going to carry y'all right on through.
Thank you. Yes, it's definitely, like I said, it's shown us. I feel like I can't necessarily speak for my husband, but for me, it's definitely showed me that it's so many things that you always think, I could never do this. I used to be so quick to say, oh, I don't know what I would do if I had to go. I could never have, I could never do that. And there was a certain point when we were having to go through this or go through that and having to do things that we thought we would never have to do. And it definitely showed me, not just how strong our little family is, but just our extended family, friends, our village. Because y'all held us down a lot of times. So I've been doing good. I'm not going to cry.
Girl, you got it right. Honey, this is your testimony. I know, but once
I get started, I might not stop. But we are, it has shown us so much. And we're just, continuing to do whatever we can, not just to support Karter, but support other people dealing with spina bifida.
And I thank God even for how his older brother just is right in there with him. And like you said, y'all make things normal. And that's amazing. That's amazing. And I just encourage you, keep doing it. Like I heard you say, somebody said, who gonna tell him he got spina bifida? Like, I really appreciate that outlook. And when I heard someone say that, I think I heard Jessica say that she had heard y'all say that, it made me like, what limitations? For me, what limitations? I got what? And so just the strength that y'all exhibit, we can put across the board. Thank you so much for coming to share this journey with us. Like I said, I believe you'll be back. We started this conversation on Mama's sofa playing. Just playing one day. Started the conversation and both of us crying in a matter of 5 minutes. So then I knew, oh yeah, I gotta have her on there. So thank you so much for coming. I'm sure we'll be seeing your face again. And I just want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Sister Speak Brother Break show. Make sure that you share this, because like I said, it doesn't, when we're talking about what God is doing, you don't have to pigeonhole it for what the guest has gone through. But I believe that there's been something that's said that you can apply to your life, and then share it with someone who needs strength or hope or needs their faith given a boost. And I believe that it's going to make a difference in their lives. So until we meet again, same place, same time next week, thank you for watching the Sister Speak Brother Break show. Be blessed. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've been blessed by today's show, feel free to let us know. And if you'd like to sow into this ministry, become a sponsor, or contact us, you can reach us at 803-221-0169. Or you can email us at thessbbshow@gmail.com. Let's continue this journey together.